We're in a former passenger car. It is one of the cars that we were in as a museum at first. It wasn't this elaborate. It had simply been a passenger car that had been stripped out for use as part of the restaurant, but was no longer being used that way. So we had some exhibits in here just sitting along the walls. There was nothing elaborate like there is now, where we were able to again raise some money from some sources to vastly improve it. The one thing we found out interestingly as we were working on it, it had an old the square tile floor, and it was all chipped and curling and getting bad. So they tore it up intending to replace it and realized it still has the original wooden floor. Cars like this, and we're talking the 19-teens, they would pour a layer of concrete over the floor to add weight to the car and make it ride better. Well, that didn't happen to this one, fortunately. So the floor, the old wooden floor, was refinished. You can see in the floor the spots where the seats were fastened down. They have round plugs in them, just like that. And as time goes on, we do change things and add things. Over here is a display that's only about a year old. It deals with the huge switching yard out at the west edge of the city. It was opened in 1958. This is one of the original control panels, white lines being the tracks, and then each knob through a huge computer on the site controlled the switches out in the tracks to control the movement of the cars. That picture was taken back about the time the yard opened. All the farmland there is all factories now. This is the Chicago yard for this line.
Okay. So everything.
They will, a train coming in here from the east is going to have picked up cars along the way, and the different cars are going different directions out west. Once it gets to Chicago, well, Chicago's rails are as congested as their highways. So this is the Chicago yard for this line.
And
they'll break up a train here according to where the cars
get all
are going
the cargo
west,
right,
and put all the cars going the same direction past Chicago together into one train that leaves here, and then just can change crews and keep on going after it gets to Chicago. Likewise, an eastbound train coming through Chicago onto this line comes here to be broken up according to where the cars are going out east. So it's an important spot on this line. Elkhart always has been what they call a division point. That's where the different divisions of the railroad join together, and where trains are broken up, where crews change. In the old days, the early steam engines, they could go about 100 miles before they had to be replenished with coal and water and surfaced and so forth. So they would change, about every 100 miles, they would change engines, so they wouldn't take time to do all that with the one.
Just have one ready.
But Toledo's a division point, Chicago's a division point. Guess who's about halfway in between?
Boom.
Elkhart.
There you go.
Yeah. The DeWitt Clinton, first engine and train on what eventually became the New York Central. Very primitive, as you can see. The rails, the original rails, were actually the wooden stringers underneath, and you had a metal or an iron bar that was fastened to the top of the wood, and that's what they were actually riding on. The line through here, the first line, the first name, railroads changed names like banks and supermarkets as ownership changes, was the Michigan Southern and Northern Indiana. That came down, started out in Michigan, came over and came down into Indiana to go to Chicago. That merged, everything was a merger, with the Lakeshore, which went from Buffalo, New York to Toledo. So you had the Lakeshore and Michigan Southern. That was taken over by the New York Central, which was merged with the Pennsylvania to form Penn Central. Then you had Conrail, and now it's Norfolk Southern out here. I always explain that this collection of maps here is the story of this line in maps, because this line, this location, is on every one of these maps.
Okay.
Because Conrail was a collection of 5 bankrupt railroads. Now, it came to it back, like he was saying in that time, that both CSX and Norfolk Southern wanted to buy Conrail. They started offering people money for their shares, and they bid it up so high, neither one could afford to buy the whole thing.
Wow.
So it was split up. But in all the merging, some of the areas out east in the New York, New Jersey area and up around Detroit, the mixture of former railroads was so complicated they couldn't figure out how to separate them. So there is still a Conrail that's jointly owned by Norfolk Southern and CSX, operates in the Detroit area, out in the New York, New Jersey area.